We have heard a number of times in this conference about the importance of leadership in student success. Without the commitment of leadership, it is clear that we remain peripheral and at small scale. And so it is with great pleasure that I invite various of our Deputy Vice-Chancellors, Vice-Rectors. They come by 1,000 different names. So may I ask you all to join us on the stage. So this is of the partner institutions. We did meet on Tuesday, with the participant Deputy Vice-Chancellors. And I'm sure next time you'll see some of our plans for the future. We're trying not to anymore have two categories, but one category of members of the Siyaphumelela network. So in this session, we are going to ask the questions of these senior leaders at the institutions, and I'll give you in a moment the kind of structure that we're going to use in order to do that. But in welcoming them, I would like to start by asking each of them to introduce themselves to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Suren Singh. I'm the Acting Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Teaching and Learning at DVT.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Harsha, Kathard, Acting DVC for Teaching and Learning at UCT.
Good morning, everybody. Engela from Staden, not acting. And lately, UFS changed the Vice-Rectors to DVCs. Yeah, teaching and learning.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Sandile Songca. I am the Deputy Vice-Chancellor for Teaching and Learning at the University of KwaZulu-Natal.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Phumeza, Kota-Nyati, Dean of Learning and Teaching from Nelson Mandela University, standing in for our VC and DVC Learning and Teaching who are traveling. Thank you.
Jenny, you're quite right. We come by different shades and shapes and names as well. My name is Ruksana Osman. I'm the Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Wits University.
Tawela. I am Matete Madiba, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at UWC for Student Development and Support.
Thank you very much for those introductions. You'll see on your program those names are there, and aside from, no, we haven't given the titles there, but you can see from which universities. So today's session, in looking at the future priorities of Siyaphumelela, but not forgetting all the work that we have done already and should continue to do, so that would also be part of our future. We have got three questions that we would like these senior leaders to respond to. The first one, what should future Siyaphumelela, and by that we mean both the institutional and the network priorities be, and why? The second question, how will your university build on what you have done and achieved towards your future priorities? And the third one, what are the opportunities and challenges in institutionalizing Siyaphumelela? Now, I didn't want to have 7 presentations answering these questions, so we've decided to do it a little differently and ask some institutions to lead on the questions and others then to add. So for the first question, we're going to get WITS and Free State, University of the Free State, to give a more substantive response and then ask the other institutions to add. I'm also going to ask for additions from the floor, and I'll explain that in a little. The second question, we're going to ask UCT and DUT to respond in some depth to that question, and then we're going to open it to the other Vice-Chancellors and also to the floor. And what are the opportunities and challenges in institutionalizing Siyaphumelela? We've seen in various of the presentations and also from the participant universities that a great deal of progress has been made in this area of institutionalizing Siyaphumelela, but there's still quite a long way to go. And then the remaining 3 institutions will speak to that question with additions. So I'm going to have to try and keep some time as well, but I do want to start by asking you not only to remember the wonderful dancing of last night, but also to start contributing, because as we move forward to the next stage of Siyaphumelela, we have always done this in a kind of collaborative way, trying to understand what the ideas are and putting it together in different ways. So we'd like your responses as well. So I'm going to ask you just to find a neighbour, you've all got neighbours, and just answer the first question, just between the two of you. What are your ideas? So we start in that way. So I'm just going to give you 2 minutes because we don't have a lot of time. So in your minds, as you participated in this conference, participated in huge numbers of really inspiring parallel sessions, what do you think the future Siyaphumelela institutional and network priorities should be, and why?
All right.
Good sound. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to start by actually giving the accolades of the success story of UFS to this project. And I want to acknowledge the way UFS has progressed and with the assistance of what has been done through this project. We were 15 years ago, the second last institution in our success rate, at about 65%. UFS has improved that success rate to 85% in 15 years. So Carol, when you said that, it reminded me of what UFS achieved. But it could not have achieved in terms of the specific interventions, the evidence approach that was done. And therefore, I'm going to start by reprioritizing where we are, is that the progression focus that the Siyaphumelela and the Kresge Foundation had on what we did, how we did it, why we did it, and then we've done it with the assistance of the funding, with the UCDG grants, etc. You cannot do your interventions without the funding and the aligning of that and putting them. So I've got 3 points in terms of what I believe should and can be the next priorities. So we have focused on progression. But for the UFS to move to the next level, we want to look at progression in minimum time. We really want to understand why our students are not getting the degrees in the minimum time. And I think for other universities it's very important, because we are positioning the UFS now to become research-led and to move into the next sphere of its development. So understanding and interventions needed for students to be successful in the academic program in their own time, by doing that in minimum time, will need different data, will need different type of interventions, and that will be our priority. But also in terms of the system, it's very important also, and this is my second point, articulation. The policies of the DHET and the government is very clearly on access, but it has also shifted to articulation within the PSET. So for me, articulation is between different qualification types and between institutional types. We need to track our students between the different types of qualifications, from vocational, professional, formative. They are, a lot of them, there's blockages for them not being able to progress. What are those factors? How do we base our evidence to get them that they can go from, for instance, extended curriculum programs to a mainstream and then still graduate in minimum time? We will never and should not never forget our extended curriculum programs or our foundation programs. It is a means of access, but our students do stay too long in those programs. We do provide the student support through the foundation grant, but that analytical evidence to get them, because those are the marginalized students from educational disadvantaged backgrounds. So that is for us very important as well. And also in terms of the policy of articulation, students coming from the TVET colleges, specifically to our UOT, specifically to our vocational programs, but they're not progressing through the system. So how do we help them, specifically on where they are coming from, through to be successful? So that's the second point. The third point is, we have changed our mode of delivery. Our institutions with COVID has gone on to blended learning. There's research saying that blended learning is actually contributing to the success of students. Our data that we have now on national level, and UFS is turning the other way around, our success rate improved by 5%, way above what it should be. And because of our online assessments, with the way they have been learning and the teaching has taken place. Suddenly we're back on formative assessments and face-to-face assessments. The drops in our faculties are an eye-opener. One faculty moved from 85% to 67%. Now this is clearly something wrong. So we need to understand what we need to do. Is it from a student development point of view? Is it from a staff development point of view? And what kind of support can we utilize, not only to help our students, but also our staff in those kind of intervention. My last point, Jenny, is I've noted there's 17 networks. When I got involved, I think it was 7 universities. We are 17 universities. I think the good story to tell from what this is achieved through our different universities needs to be shared with the other 9. It has to expand the network. It can also expand our network to let them start thinking about the progression of their own students. And our TVET colleges are always left behind. And I think that is the network that I would really like to create. Thank you, Jenny. I know.
We would love to, but it is a big jump, a big step, and we do need to get commitment, obviously, in the first instance, and do all that work of commitment. But thank you very much to those 2 contributions. May I open it to remaining senior leaders here? Anything you'd like to add?
It will be a quick one. I do note that for many years universities have been transforming very rapidly in South Africa. And equally so, society outside has also been transforming in many ways. But one thing that has remained very stubbornly resilient is the way we assess. I don't change that at all. Sticking to the old rituals and not aligning them either with the new student typology that is coming in or the changes in society. I think Siyaphumelela will do serious good in focusing on that in the future.
Thank you.
So my other point is just linked to all of the efforts that have been made is the investment in the scholarship of the work that we're doing. So the scholarship of student success, and I think that will build the momentum in the system, but show the track of long-lasting changes that will emerge, through the process. And we know it's not a quick process, but I think the investments that are being made now are absolutely critical, and it's important for us to document that. The other is just the AI space, and just listening to what we did yesterday, I think it would be really helpful for us to have a joint collaborative project across the university network to focus perhaps on one priority and then use that as an innovation space Yesterday the discussion was, for example, on AI and multilingualism, and I certainly think there's a lot of space for building that space of innovation.
I'd like to step in. There is a lot that we keep talking to. There are many innovations and interventions that all of us work on. I do believe that, especially from our university, we need to map what we are doing. We also, beyond just mapping, we need the students' voice. There is a need for needs assessments. We've tended to move and respond and react to what the students are needing, but we haven't really turned an ear to what is actually needed by the new student in the university. We talk quintile 1 to 3, we talk students that are new and not used to our systems, we talk different and old ways of doing things that were accommodative of an affluent, able student who came from everything that they could have. We haven't listened necessarily to the needs of the students and hear the voices of your viewers and others that will tell us exactly what student success and student support is for them. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to add on to the scholarship part and say, going forward, we should get more organized and intentional around Siyaphumelela into our regional networks and into our universities to really take this work and do the scholarship part. Presenting at conferences is a step, but not the end goal of scholarship, and we need to be more serious in making sure that we document our work through peer-reviewed, published work, articles, and maybe there should be a call for a book or two around the work that is happening here, and Siyaphumelela should take that seriously. But as we go back to our institutions, we should make sure that the DVCs for research and the directors for research take us seriously as practitioners outside the classroom. Remember, many of our policies in our institutions never cater for people like this in terms of research support. We need to go for research retreats, and it should be part of the rhythm in making sure that work like this is documented. I'm tempted to go on, but let me stop.
Wow, so there are a number of ideas there. I'm almost anxious about asking for more, but and I do remember Tim yesterday, and are we going to be Australians or are we going to be New Zealanders in how we prioritize what it is that we do. But just open to the floor, we can take a couple of and I invite you to send me others if you would like to do so. Any ideas from the floor? We have 1, 2 over there, 3, 4, ooh, 5, finished.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and for the presentations. I'm Heidi from the University of Pretoria. One thing I would like to see more of is the access part. We were fortunate to have presentations from UP on the Pre-University Academy initiatives. We can do everything and all the beautiful things to encourage persistence and throughputs. But what are we doing to encourage access? Because that, our work really needs to articulate backwards, and which is something I learned from Professor Gude, that we need to also kind of showcase, share good practice around that. And I've seen in the US, some conferences, few teachers are invited to forums like this, where is basic education, to hear what we are doing so that there is that seamless transition that we can see. And I believe that will really make a significant difference in the work that we're doing.
Thank you. May I ask you to be as short as possible, because I'm going to have to cut off at a time, or otherwise I'm going to take your whole tea time, which I don't want to do.
Thank you. I'll be short. I'm Munewa from the University of Pretoria, but from the Pre-University Academy itself. And because Heidi has already said much of what I wanted to say, it's while we are, many of us now, working with when the learners are at university, we need to be articulating backwards, because we are seeing evidence of learners from this quintile who are never going to get into the system if we don't pick them up here from the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was one there. Were you up in the first? Was your hand up in the first place? Yes. Okay.
Thank you. I want to say something about access and success as well, but I want to take it from the orientation week, and I'm going to rock the boat a little bit. What about considering doing career guidance at orientation week with all your students? Because them having a goal will help with success.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Letitia Pomo from the University of the Western Cape. I think when we see the impact that the work that's being driven from Siyaphumelela, from a teaching and learning perspective, and we witness the success of that, and the emerging evidence of the impact of mental health and psychosocial factors on student success, I think it's imperative for us to consider to amplify. There's a voice that's missing, and that voice is the student affairs voice, which has always been on the periphery of the institution, and when there's anything that goes wrong with the student, then that division is recognized for solving the problem. But when it comes to engagements like this, that voice is absent. And so I really want to invite institutions to be quite intentional about not making it feel like you're doing student affairs a favor to invite them, but acknowledge that you don't have a situation where the expertise lies there when it comes to it, that we don't end up taking over roles that are already, the expertise that already exists in institutions. And then secondly, how do we ensure that the data that's lying there, without compromising the ethics of the data, how do we ensure that that gets integrated into the institutional data so that we really look at holistic student success? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning. It's going to be very short, Jenny. I asked the first question yesterday to the institutional lead, and I wanted to give a follow-up to that, so now I have that opportunity to do that follow-up. The response was scholarship, and even today, the response to two of the colleagues here is scholarship. It is very important. In my view, it is not enough. And I think for the network, we need to start looking at how we digitize what we are doing here, have well-curated and well-scripted videos and library, because many of our colleagues who are actual practitioners on the ground do not have opportunities to participate here or to attend Siyaphumelela because of the limited resources, of course. There's high retention, turnover in higher education currently. New people are coming in. It would be important to have this library to go back to, even for ourselves, to reinforce some of the learnings. The first thing that comes to my mind, if I want to learn a new skill or remember something, I go to YouTube, watch a 3-minute video, and I remember exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I think we should do that as a network moving forward. On the student voice side, I think we need to go again digital, the platforms that students use. For example, my colleague and I, when we were in another institution, we wanted to understand the residence experience for students. And we wanted to design a study that asks 4 questions only. Send us a picture of where you sleep, send us a picture of where you study, where you prepare your food, and the bathrooms. And we were going to do an exhibition in the admin building so that the senior leaders, as they walk in, they can see the state of student residences. So we need to go into those platforms. They can create small videos and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. Somehow we've got 6, so there's 1 more. And then we really must close. Over there, please. Please, can you make it short? Don't really promise to make it short, but make it short.
Okay, thank you. My name is Litemba and I'm from NMU, Nelson Mandela University. I wanted to just advise or just to say this. I wrote it down to try to be soft. So one thing I've realized is that we need to create more awareness about Siyaphumelela, that is to all the staff within different institutions, and not only engage as higher up management, that is when it comes to planning, and include the middle to lower management when it comes to attending the conferences, representation, but to engage, create more awareness throughout the institutions, because what happens is that when you hear about Siyaphumelela, like at first time, and you hear that there's these opportunities like what DHET was representing about the different fundings. If we can be aware about such things, it would be easier for us to then be innovative. Like the other guy was talking about making things available online for students, because we somehow, I see that we forget that us as well, or not me included, but the old generation, you were one student. So I think we forget when we get to those positions that you were once a student, and you need to have that mind again, that, okay, this is how I was assisted. And sometimes you guys forget. So yeah, that's my piece of advice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. There's lots of food for thought in there, some new big areas to think about, and then lots of suggestions about how we do it, rather than a big area in which we must start to operate. So we're now ready to go on to number 2. How will your university build on what you've done and achieve towards your future priorities? And I'm going to ask UCT and DUT to... Whoops, sorry, can you hear me? I'm going to ask UCT and DUT. And we've got we seem to have lost some of our mics. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to be quick only because I think the audience participation is giving us such a lot to think about, so I'm going to say a little at this point. So to build on this, my first thought about it was actually around the ethos. So what is it that we're building, and we're building a particular culture. And for us at UCT, it's unleashing human potential through care and compassion in achieving our dreams. And when we think about how we're going to build this is the institutional challenge. It's easy to have a vision, it's easy to have the statements, but to live it in our everyday spaces is our challenge. And so what we're doing currently is, what we have is an integrated student success working group. And there's 2 parts to this. It's the one side of it is really integrating all of the processes, so from student affairs to housing to academic support, etc., recruitment, careers guidance, so that we bring that ethos into the action and consolidate that movement as we go along. We know that this is not easy. Riyashna will tell you about the challenges. But at the same time, I think the opportunity that lies to build an institution that has a sense of being different but transforming in a sustainable way, I think is absolutely critical. The second point is really around what I would call embedding, and how do we embed all of the student success initiatives into our strategy and our operations. I've learned from being in this position that if you don't put it up front and central in every committee meeting you have, the opportunity is then lost. So for us, building, for example, I spoke yesterday about the curriculum change process, and that is strategy, and building student success directly into that strategy is absolutely critical, so that everybody understands why we're doing it and what that goal is. Importantly for that, it's saying that we build because then we get the investment from the institution, not just in financial terms, but also for the collective goal of us working together, and I think we've talked a lot about that in this space. The other is, of course, at the operational level, so at every committee meeting, every faculty process, and every financial process, the importance of this work is foregrounded, with the intention of what's our next step? How are we going to build on what we have? And then the third point is really around what I would call the embodying. And I think that's what people have been saying in this room, that not everybody who's here is the network. The network extends far beyond who's in the room today. And so the idea of embodying is really bringing the people with passion and purpose as key drivers into this project. And as we talk to people in our institutions and network, we realize how much more energy there is in the system that we could embody and bring into this process. And for me, this is also part of that sustainable change, so that if people leave and there's change in leadership or any other level of process, that this work is then embodied with whoever's in the environment. But I think investing in the people themselves is absolutely critical. I think what we've heard from Siyaphumelela Network is how important the development of the people in the network is, and expanding on that. So, you know, through the scholarship, through the digital platforms, through the professional development, this network has potential really to provide us with the sustainable change. And I think that for me, the other is just that there has been networking and such important gains in the networking. So from the UCT side, just to kind of say, how do we continue to build that network, both at a regional, national, and international level? And that certainly is a goal that we will continue to hold on. Thanks.
Mr. Singh, DUT.
Thank you. I think it was very appropriate. We had a presentation on the UCDG, so I thought I'd just mention that when I started with this, in this post, I think UCDG needs a revolution. It needs fresh ideas, new ideas beyond 2024. And I think it's not the support that's coming from them, but I think we need to change it in terms of how it is structured. But that's a bigger mission when we put our projects together. The second point I want to mention, the issue about SRCs, and I think from DUT's perspective, we value the student voice. It's very important. And from the DVC teaching and learning, we meet with the entire SRC every quarter and engage. And the third point that came from the audience around student residences, I think when you look at student success, it's holistic. We actually have the council and TED go through our student residences every year. I think it's very important when you look at it. So coming back to DUT and how it will push ahead in terms of where it is and what it has achieved, you must have heard when my colleague, Professor Mapulalo, presented, DUT has focused very strongly on Vision 2030 and where it wants to be in the next 7 years. And in terms of going through that, we try to transform the way in which we will approach student success in a variety of ways, not just looking at how we're going to look at throughput, but what are the factors that will actually catalyze that throughput, student success rate, pass rates across the board. So I could sit here for quite a long time explaining how we're doing that at DUT, but I just thought I'd just mention a few points. The university went through a whole change in terms of its philosophy of education statement. It has focused on how creativity and innovation shapes adaptive graduates that will transform society. In terms of keeping with that, it has outlined its success indicators towards a plan for the next 7 years. It is very strongly focused on lived values as a framework for both staff and students. And in terms of achieving that, I think Harsha mentioned quite a few points around digitization, etc. I'll briefly mention 10 of them very quickly. But just to mention that DUT has been a long-time partner of Siyaphumelela as early as phase 1. We've had programs around Pakumpilo, Ambisa, and Sikhusikele. And one thing to mention to you is that we have NSFAS students of over 23,000 in number. That's closing in as of 2022 of over 70%. And I think as of this year, it's probably closing up to 80%. So looking ahead in terms of how we're going to build up all of these interactions, towards student success, I think we are looking at a number of factors. One is looking at how we're going to transform our programs, how we're going to push ahead with innovative curricula, have interdisciplinary curricula, and part of that exercise was, over the last few years, we've actually transformed that. And in the last 3 years alone, we have over 100 programs have been changed to accomplish this. We've also had a very close link on design thinking with UCT in the pre-COVID. We've had project-based learning that has been introduced into our programs as of this year, fully funded in every single faculty. In terms of, we have an Access for Success project, which was mentioned earlier, to look at yeah, so there were a number. So quickly, just to close up, I think in terms of creating student success, there's also a focus in terms of how we create an environment for students. The university has made great strides in terms of hoping to have over 10,000 student beds on campus. So when we're looking at, that will be 1/3 of your student population on campus. And I think lastly, in terms of having student success, from Randi from UKZN, we have Auto Scholar, the issue around a new ERP system, and also focusing on live data to catch actors, modules, and actors students. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, a chance to just add. I'm afraid I'm not going to be asking the audience this time because I'm really beginning to get into tea, but I would like to, I think we've answered a lot of question 3 already, so perhaps we can go a bit more quickly. But yes, additions to...
Can I just respond quickly as well? Jenny, it's very important that, and it asks then how you achieve that towards your future priorities is the success story of UFS, we're going to build towards the next pipeline of postgraduate. I don't know if institutions will do that analysis that in our postgraduate, our own students are not reaching the echelon of that qualification type. If you look at our PhD cohort, and I've counted the other day in terms of our graduates, our doctoral graduates, if there's 10 graduating, 2 is South African. That has a major impact on the research agenda of South Africa and the impact of that research, because a lot of those research from our foreign students, international students, are on their country, in Uganda, Kenya, etc. So that's an important point to make. Also, 70%, believe it or not, of UFS students are in NSFAS. For us now to take that student successfully through the undergraduate in minimum time, but prepare them so that they can continue in terms of their postgraduate studies, specifically in the honours, the advanced diplomas and those kind of. So it's access, but it's taking access to a different level and utilize what we've learned on the undergraduate, expediting that through to your postgraduate, then understand what kind of support you need in that postgraduate study to be successful and to go further. It has become each lecturer's responsibility in UFS to know what's happening in my module, how my students are performing, why they're not performing what they're supposed to do, and reach out to CTL and my admiration for Professor Staden for what he has achieved to get that and to build on those interventions to help each lecturer. And that's part of the job description. And that's how you build your internal network within your institution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I do a quick one? There is a reason why South Africa is encouraging universities to focus on quintile 1, 2, 3. My own university, for instance, University of KwaZulu-Natal, has made it policy to focus and work very hard on quintiles 1, 2. This is not to say we're neglecting 4 and 5. In fact, we have a different agenda for 4 and 5. We want to build on that and emerge in time as excellent for Q1 to 3. But at the same time, giving excellent horizons for 4 and 5.
Thank you. Okay. Just a simple one from my side. We've expected a lot of our staff, especially during COVID times. People have put everything they could to make things happen for students. And I think that we need to build a very strong capacitation program for the staff that need to make the success possible. So both from the academic side, the past side, and everyone who's in the room, because we have stretched ourselves. The wellness of our staff, as well as the wellness of our students, is really challenged. And we need to, at a point, capacitate and support and ensure the wellness of both sides. Thank you.
So we have two initiatives really that are going to attempt to further what we've already done. And the one is consolidating several separate units in student affairs into a center for student development, but with a very clear focus on transitions. And I think the transitions question is addressed, tries to address the fact that students move from first year into second year into third year. And related to that then is under my office, I'll be setting up an office that coordinates student success initiatives within the university, and which is consistent with the WITS institutional success framework. I've come to see that as much as I would like a sector-wide approach to student success, if we can get an institution-wide, a whole institution-wide approach to student success, that'll be good enough.
I am so pleased to see the work that is going on at UWC, in particular in terms of how we work with data. And I think across the sector we know we have to mature the systems that we've put in place in terms of working around data. Someone yesterday reminded us about the saying that if you torture the data too long, it will confess whatever. But I think for us it should be the opposite. We should mature our data systems and our practices to such an extent that the data will torture us to confess our sins of omissions and force us to do those very things that we need to do to transform our universities, transform our communities, and transform the country. With the student success movement that we are into, we do have a number of things going for us, and how we manage data is one of them. Without being narcissistic, may we be tortured into doing what needs to be done.
Excellent, thank you very much indeed. Let's just finalize now with our third question, which is what are the opportunities and challenges in institutionalizing Siyaphumelela? And we're going to start with Nelson Mandela University.
The first thing, which was already mentioned by UCT, is the issue of embedding the project. We were very fortunate in our university because our Siyaphumelela projects are writing strategy. Our leader is sitting in institutional planning, where our Vision 2030 is driven, and therefore the issue of student success, and not just student success, but access to success, is centered. We have been very clear that everything we do centers, and Wednesday, Lizzle showed a visual of our student-centeredness that's right at the center of our strategy. Our policy is changing to focus. I recently reviewed our readmissions policy, and not just to be punitive, because our readmissions have always been about warnings and exclusions and expand. But I've added a very strong side to student success, which is linked to progression, development, and support. So we've moved away from just a readmissions policy that would worry about who needs to be taken out of the institution. But early warning linked to, again, our radar system, that early warns leads to development and support. And when sitting in committees, I refuse to have any student warned if there's no evidence of support. So we center every single element to success, and we center every single element to the entire body. What you would have noticed is our projects don't just come from past departments. They come from academic departments, because our academics have taken on Siyaphumelela projects and have linked their teaching to success. And as a university, we've pulled together the elements of academic support and the student and staff into one specific space. The integration of our services is very vital. And we cannot succeed, again, I'm going to overemphasize the point. We cannot succeed as students if our staff are not successful. If our staff are not enjoying vitality, wellness, and productivity, we are not going to produce the best students. Yay.
Thank you. We do have a number of opportunities, I believe, and part of it is we are able to talk about high impact practices. It's part of our vocabulary, and I hope with this type of a movement we get to know what it is, and we have tasted, we have experimented, so from now on I believe it is about scaling up. For example, we can confidently talk about the first year experience way beyond just the orientation week that we've been doing with information overload. We can program or do some programming around the first year experience, and actually to my colleagues at UWC, but across the sector, I want to believe that we can put our first year experience programming on steroids, given that we do understand what high impact practices are, like learning communities. We talked data analytics, we talk peer advising, peer mentoring, and many others that we have experimented with. Now we should be taking our first experience and other programs that we do to the next level to make sure that we really see the impact. And I believe that we are at a position where we can do that. Besides that, I just want to go back to scholarship and say, as a community like this, we come from various disciplines. A large number of us are not directly in the classroom. So we should be talking about the scholarship of integration. By the way, the scholarship of integration is also one of those seeds that Boya planted alongside the scholarship of teaching and learning. We've theorized and developed practices around SOTO, the scholarship of teaching and learning, but we haven't done much work around the scholarship of integration. And we have an opportunity through the work and a movement like this where we talk about student success, because we say it is the responsibility of everyone. It will take all disciplines, so we should be building those multidisciplinary teams to do cross and transdisciplinary work, but we should drive this work through scholarship and the scholarship of integration. The last part is I am one in terms of doing work into the kind of pre-academic work, but anchoring, because I am convinced that we need to take the skills and the practices that we've come to understand into the communities where our universities are. And for UWC, it is quite clear that anchoring is not an option. We really have to take retention and success into the schools from ECD to matric, the schools around us, but through that do a lot of community partnering and talk social mobility, not just inside the university for our students, but talk social mobility into our immediate communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. At UKZN, we have identified the institutional intelligence organization in the university as a major focus for capacitation to take ownership of the entire suite of data analytics practices, whether it's data mining, analysis, visual presentation, and communications. The second thing that we want to do is to build the capacities through the coaching, through the support, for example, for institutional research projects. The third one is that we have seen that the Siyaphumelela and partnership has actually allowed us to look both backwards and forwards. I talked earlier about traditional rituals that are stubbornly refusing to change, whether it's assessments or massive classroom instruction. And we want to focus now on how we can facilitate a shift around those practices. One of the critical areas that we want to focus on, which has many challenges in the future, is to shift from excessive focus on student limitation, particularly perceived as arising from the origin of student, the whole notion of Q1 to Q3, but to focus on how these underprepared students are actually succeeding in navigating success, and focus on that and build. This is why I said we want to merge in time as excellent with that group of students. Well, the last one. I was speaking with a colleague yesterday on institutionally disparate services focusing on the student, which gave us the whole notion of referrals. Go there and get this service, then come back. Oh, it didn't work, go there and get this service. No, it's wrong. We need to integrate and centralize, whether virtual or otherwise. The student cannot be told to go from pillar to post. The student must go to one point and be served, and served until the service provided achieves purpose. Thank you very much.
Right, could I ask other Vice-Chancellors to add to this?
I think, Jenny, just a very quick one. And I think the biggest challenge in institutions, specifically in terms of the limited funding, is that funding to be sustainable. You can't do your planning, your actions, your annual performance plans, your performance plans for your teams if you don't know if that funding will be there in the next year and that we can depend on that. So that's the first challenge. The next one is, in terms of an institution, is to utilize that funding that is allocated appropriately with the other funds that you have. Because a lot of times this is a certain focus of a project, but the money to implement those interventions are in other grants. And I think that has now been presented to the UCDG and those of the student support through the foundation program for our ECPs has to be augmented. And I think that is the kind of challenges, because that delivers impact.
So I think there are fresh opportunities for institutionalizing Siyaphumelela programs across the sector.
Can you hear me?
Now we can. Yeah, good. I mean, I think there are several opportunities currently to institutionalize Siyaphumelela. One needs to be very clear about what one wants to do with it, and I think we need to be very clear with our own intentions. So I think several have spoken about on the panel and in the audience around the question of integration across the university. And like I said earlier, for me, if there was integration across the sector would be so great, but if we can get it right in the institution will be fantastic. I do think the question of students and their mobility across the university is going to become important in terms of how they transition from one phase to another. But in terms of business information systems, I think we've got very capable data engineers and data analysts who are very responsive to questions. I'm always mindful about just having the data and then not knowing what to do with it. So sometimes I think not having it at all is better. But if you know what to do with it is important. At WITS, student success is now firmly embedded into the WITS 23 strategy. It's firmly there. And I mean, the challenge remains resource, and I don't think it's just financial resourcing. I think it's resourcing in terms of full buy-in from the university into the idea of what it means for students to succeed. And I would go so far as to say the persons cooking the meals, to the residents, to the bus drivers driving our students to class, the idea of student success needs to be at that level. We tend to have it only at this kind of level in a discourse community, but I think when the bus driver is driving the students from residence to class, he needs to know that the focus of this university is on the question of student success. So I think there are many opportunities for institutionalizing. The one thought I did think I'd put here is that we think a lot about precision medicine. Why do we not think about precision learning, where student agency is an important part of that student success? So it's not just the initiatives we put in place, but what students think about their own success. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the opportunities and challenges, well, is in how Siyaphumelela, in our work, respond to some of the institutional priorities. And so as an example, or continues to develop that, if we think about student mental health and gender-based violence, these are key issues that we really need to consider much more deeply, both in terms of our understanding, our student agency, but also embedding the fact that whatever our responses are part of societal responses, and so seeing how universities are parts of society and how that transformation within universities is going to be a facilitator almost of societal transformation as well. So I think that there is a great opportunity for seeing Siyaphumelela as accelerating societal transformation, and I certainly think that with the collective vision, passion, and responsibilities that we all have, that's certainly something that we can see that this is our dream, and we will certainly achieve that. Thank you.
Yeah, DET has been involved with Siyaphumelela for quite a while now. I think in terms of we don't foresee this as a challenge, but simply institutionalizing it as we have in practice, and I think in making it grow and trying to firmly embed it in terms of our student success practices across the entire university. As we mentioned about the bus driver, yes, we have to, the soft issues around student success are well driven at the university, and I think student success is a journey. And another important factor to note is the universities have to build a teaching and learning culture around this. It's very important. And we mustn't forget that we have a new generation of academics that are coming through the system as well. Not just that those that are funded, but those that we are trying to push through the system so that they'll create that student success ethos in sort of a new dimension of teaching and learning. Thank you.
Dr. Mhlanga, are you here? Yes. There is an evaluation that's going to be going out. Is there a question in there which says any other comments?
Yes, there's provision for that.
Okay. May I ask all of you, having encouraged you to think about these three questions, if you've got anything that you wish to say, that you had longing to put your hand up and say, I think this is the most important thing, please put that into the evaluation. Perhaps that will also encourage people, like we try to encourage our students, to complete the evaluation. And with that, I would just like to thank the senior leadership around the table. I think it is most heartening to see the extent to which senior leadership has really got its finger on the button as far as student success is concerned. And so it gives me great hope as we move forward that we have these energetic, enthusiastic, motivated people who have mentioned very many important matters, including, of course, nurturing staff across the entire sector. So thank you very much, all of you, for your participation, and we look forward to hearing of your successes.
Thank you.